Good morning, class. Happy Monday, May 11. Hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. Today's learning target is to describe the main causes of the French Revolution. So we've talked about the Industrial and American Revolutions. Now we're going to start talking about the French Revolution. Our agenda for today. First, we will review last week's quick write on the American Revolution that you did last week, Thursday and Friday. After that, we'll talk a little bit about trying to balance the idea of authority versus revolution. The idea of authority we talked about in the Age of Absolutism unit, and we're currently in the Revolution unit. You will then read an article from History.com comparing the American to the French Revolution. We're trying to compare and contrast those two, what they have in common, what are different between the two. And then you'll have a primary source worksheet about the causes of the French Revolution. That is due today, 3 p.m. That will be a homework grade. Also, for future reference, at the end of this week, you will have a quiz on global revolutions, and I will give you more details about that quiz either tomorrow or Wednesday. So first, a quick write from last week. Question asked you, was the American Revolution justified? Just want to review this and give you an opportunity. If you would like to retake that quick write, what you would do is either rewrite it as a private comment, or you would edit your original response, turn it in, and just make sure you let me know you've done that. You can earn full points back if you choose to do that. Just a couple things to know. One, a review of two definitions. I think we already did the first one, revolution, but when you Google definition of revolution, it is a forcible overthrow of a government or social order in favor of a new system. Okay, so you are overthrowing, in this case, a government, social order, in favor of something else, and it's done forcibly. That's a revolution. Second word to define is the word justified, just to make sure we're clear on what I mean by this. Justified means having, done for, or marked by a good or legitimate reason. So these are revolutions that are marked by good, legitimate reasons. That's why they are done. That's why we have them. Okay, those are just Google definitions of those two words, just so you know and are clear on what I'm asking you. There were two main things that I was reading from both classes that showed some misinformation, and I don't necessarily blame you for that. This was stuff you would have learned in 8th grade, and I wouldn't blame you if you forgot, or maybe it wasn't taught this way. Ultimately, it's not a huge deal. This is not necessarily why I marked off points, although some people did just blatantly say false, wrong information that, quite frankly, they should have known. And I can't just give you points or keep points because, oh, well, I didn't know that. Well, part of that's on you, if it's basic enough at least. So one is the idea of taxes. Quite a few people talked about how the taxes were way too intense and way too high and basically unbearable. That's not entirely true at all. Realize we have taxes today too. The taxes in the colonies at this time were smaller than they were in Britain at the time. What that means is the British were taxing their own people more than they were taxing the colonies. So the idea that the taxes were super great, that's wrong. That's not true. Wouldn't be valid in your argument if you were making that case. Second, quite a few people referenced this idea of slavery and the fact that the American Revolution was not justified because they still had slaves and women didn't have rights. And that's true. Some people talked about how the American Revolution ended slavery and it made everyone equal. That's not true. Slaves in America weren't abolished until after the Civil War, which was 1860s. My question is, how much does slavery have to do with this? Because the American Revolution is not revolting for slaves. It's revolting against the British government, who also, by the way, at this time had slaves. Also, just so you know, the British did get rid of their slaves before the United States did, or at least they abolished slavery before, about 30, 40 years. So just two things to consider, and just to make sure we're clear on that. The missing piece for many people was you didn't take your claim, either yes it was justified or no it wasn't, and clearly connect it to Enlightenment ideas such as natural rights and social contract. It was kind of funny, a lot of people talked about Thomas Locke. I don't know who that is. They just blended Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. If you did that, you weren't the only one. I thought it was kind of funny. But make sure you connect your response with the idea of the social contract and natural rights. based on what the social contract is, based on what natural rights you have, does that justify the American Revolution? Did the colonists have enough of a break in the social contract, and were their natural rights being restricted enough where revolution was justified? That's the whole key behind how you approach this. And you need to do this now because you're going to keep doing it as we go from revolution to revolution. So you can redo this, have it done by this week, Friday, 3 p.m. at the very latest. If you have questions about how to redo it or what my comments were trying to say, please let me know. For each person's quick write, I kind of played devil's advocate and explained the other side of the view. Doesn't mean you have to change your answer to be the other side of the view. I did that for everybody regardless of what you said. I just want you to consider the other side of the story too. So a question that I want to bring up, particularly for the French Revolution, is does the end justify the means? In other words, does the end result of something automatically justify, make right how you get there? For example, would I be justified if all of my students got A's? The end is you all got A's. But the means, the process by which I did that was I insulted students, I would smack them with a wooden paddle if they got an answer wrong, I would ridicule them. Does the end, you all getting A's, justify the means, how I got you to get A's? Think about that when we talk about revolutions. Does the end result of the revolution justify how they got there? The process in which that revolution took place? Because each revolution is going to develop in a different way. So what I need you to do first, not first, but first for the French Revolution, is read this article from history.com that compares the American and French revolutions, and there's no work you have to turn in for this. What I do want you to do is take your own notes, coming up with multiple examples of what they have in common versus what they have that are different, because you will be expected to answer that later. So here's what the article looks like. I attached the direct link to the article as well. But just read through this, and in your own notes, write down a couple of similarities and a couple of differences, because I will be asking you that question later. You will have to know it, but you're not going to turn any of that in for today at least. If you have questions about that, let me know. A couple of vocab words before you start your homework for today. Things you will need to know. First is the word ancient regime. We actually brought this up in the age of absolutism with one of the first worksheets that we did. Literally, this translates to say old regime. This is the government of France before the French Revolution starts. So before French Revolution happens, their government was called the old regime. It was an absolutist government. So when you see the words ancient regime, just know that was the government before the revolution. Second is the Estates General. This is an assembly of representatives from all three of the estates, which were social classes in France. So at the time of revolution, France was split up into three different groups. These were known as estates. The first estate was basically the king and like the closest people to the king. The second estate would be clergy, church officials, and nobles, so the upper class citizens. And then the third estate was basically everyone else, middle and lower classes, the peasants, the average people. They were the third estate. And what they would hold were these Estates General meetings where these three estates would all group together to make decisions. These decisions were made in a way where each estate got one vote. So even though most of the people were in the third estate, they only got one vote. This is going to be a problem that you'll find in your worksheet. And then the last vocab word is National Assembly. This was the revolutionary government formed by the third estate, the middle lower class people. So this was the government that ends up replacing the ancient regime. So this is a government of revolution, not the old government before the revolution. So if you see these words, now you know what they mean. So what I need you to do is fill out this primary source worksheet. There are 12 questions. Each question is worth 1 point. Questions are based on various primary source documents. So these are sources coming from this time period. You are allowed to work with a partner if you want. However, I ask you to do two things. One, if you work with a partner, let me know who that is. It just helps me to grade more fairly and saves me time. Two, make sure each person turns in their own separate copy. Even if you share the document, make sure each person turns in their own. Read the primary source documents carefully. Answer the questions with specific, clear information. This is a homework grade, just to let you know what this looks like. Right, this part just gives you the context, and then there's document 1, document 2, and below that you'll have 1 or 2 questions per document. Okay, so look for these numbers. There'll be 12 questions total. Make sure you answer them all. And if you have questions about anything, please let me know. But once again, these are all primary source documents. They're all coming from this time period of the French Revolution. Good luck with the work. Once again, keep reaching out with questions. I'm here to help. I think some of you aren't doing that enough, where you're confused about something doesn't make sense. Please reach out. It's hard for me to know if you need help when you won't tell me, especially in this situation. Otherwise, know I'm continuing to pray for you. We've got just a couple weeks left. Let's try to finish the best we can. Let's rise up to this situation. I know it's not easy. It's not easy for me either, but I believe in you guys. You guys are doing a good job so far. Please keep it up and finish strong.